instructor of nursing, and a doctoral student at Hampton University. Welcome. And on the far right is Mr. Charles Southall, Vice President of Engineering and Design at Newport News Shipbuilding. Welcome. Okay, so first up, we'll start with Nancy, if you will. The first question is, what influenced you on your career path, and what role did K-12 in higher education play in it?
Okay, that's an excellent question. I get asked this a lot. Being a female working in a traditionally male-dominant field, going back to the K through 12, I'll start with that. There was a pivotal event that happened in my life in the 7th grade. I had signed up for home economics like every other female in the school. And when I got my schedule, it showed me going to shop class. And I thought the counselor must have made a mistake. And then after talking to my friends, come to find out half of them were also going to the shop class. Hampton had decided that they were going to have the females or the students that were enrolled in home economics take a semester of shop, and vice versa, the males took a semester of home economics. So all of us went in there not knowing what to think, or we felt like we were in the boys' class. I have to say it was fun. I learned how to use a scale and a drill press and a bandsaw, and I think I still have my pen holder with my giant N that I made on there, and cut it out and sanded it, and it was a lot of fun. Didn't go back to shop after that, but later on throughout my career, I was talking to my mom, what should I do? She said, well, I think you ought to take some typing classes, and that's a good career. So I took typing and shorthand in high school and got into a part-time job at NASA during my senior year in high school. And then from there, continued on at Thomas Nelson, getting a 2-year office technology degree, and then landed a job in the composite model shop. And there was one female out there working on the shop floor, making models. And I thought to myself, what am I doing behind this keyboard? I want to be out there making those models. So I talked to her. She told me about getting a mechanical technology degree at Thomas Nelson. And I asked her about the classes. At first I was pretty intimidated about having to take the math and things like that I really hadn't prepared myself in high school, but I was determined to do it. I think the next semester I signed up for a technical math class to bone myself up, knowing that I would need to get good at that. And ended up applying for a program out at NASA called the GO program, and got into an electronics program, and then from there went to the apprentice school and became a journey technician. So that's kind of my background story.
Wow, that's great. Thank you, Nancy. Sang, how about you? What influenced you?
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your question. So I came from a very different place. Clearly, opportunity defined as if I get up one morning, I didn't get shot at, I didn't get blown up, but I think my opportunity has achieved. So I'm sure many of you have heard of a little country called Vietnam, and that was a brutal war that I had experienced when I was growing up. So when I came to the United States, with the fortune or unfortunate, I didn't get a chance to go to a high school system here, so I didn't know much about that at all. I came here as an 18-year-old boy, but I realized right off the bat that, oh my gosh, this is a country of opportunities, period. And even today, I look at it and I say, where would you go, anywhere in the world, that while you're having lunch, people want to know if you can work for them as well. And if you don't believe me, just look at McDonald's, what they have. They have the Big Mac right there to say, fill this out, we'll give you a job. So to me, that was a blessing, because where I came from, there was no such thing. So as the opportunity, many exist, I decided to take the first one, which is education. And as Senator Tim came, everybody talked about Pell Grant and all that resources. I was a product of that, but I would add one more thing. the Pell Grant and also the church also is my advocate. They helped my family settle here in the United States, and so I owe them my life, because without them I would not be here. So one of the things I did was I went ahead and took some classes at Thomas Nelson. And one fateful day, while I was in the electronic classes, there was a man named John Covington. He was a co-op program coordinator out at NASA. He came and he wanted to know if those of us, anybody wanted to go to work for NASA as a co-op program. And I would just absolutely don't know what to say. I've heard of NASA, I don't know what it's about, but it sounded good. So I say, sign me up. But I got one more thing I have to tell you, because at the time when I went to work for NASA, one of those little procedures I had to go through is called an admin process. So he asked me, are you a citizen of the United States? I said, yes, I am. So he said, prove it. I said, okay. So I went home and I got me a certificate of citizen. And they said, well, I need to have a copy of that, just to make sure that you are who you said you are. So we both said, okay, take this. And he went in there and made a copy of it. And I didn't find out until later on. Right underneath there, it said that it is illegal to make a copy of this certificate, and a $10,000 fine, and 5 years in prison. So we took care of that situation real quickly. But anyway, so I went to NASA with a Mr. Know Nothing. And I got to put in a plug-in for NASA at this point in time, even though I'm no longer employed there. It's probably one of the best employers I have ever worked for, simply because it gave me the opportunity to interact with so many bright, so many smart people. And not only that, it helped me tremendously talk about technical career. Similar to what Nancy has said, I was able to learn so many things with my hand. At least I look at the machine, I can at least call it by name and not make a fool of myself, and how to do that. But then as time progresses, I begin to realizing that, this is a really opportunity for me to take what I can and apply it on other places. And so, as luck would have it, I began to, I ended up having an opportunity to work for NASA full-time. So I spent about 14 years. But I continue to look on the outside, and the skill set that I've learned at NASA has helped me to what I do today. As a business owner, I appreciate very much the opportunity to be able to learn the basics so that I can interact with my employees and the staff that are working with us. And it helped me to understand how to move forward. So I'm going to sum it up real quickly. All of that to start is right here at TNCC. And I think that's a very important message that I want to get out there is that what I learned, as a matter of fact, not only did I learn the electronic piece, but that was in the late 70s. But then I didn't have enough of it when I went back again on the early 80s, and then had another opportunity to do some training on the business management. And that, once again, Thomas Nelson was responsible for that. So I ended up, that was driving me to create my own business. And as I think you all heard Senator Tim Kaine has said earlier, he said, for folks that are going through the technical career, most likely end up having a business instead of a traditional 4-year college. And that would happen to be me. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you. Thank you for that plug of Thomas Nelson. Okay, Jonathan.
Great question. I'll try to be as succinct as I can, which is very difficult for me to do. But mine has to do with confidence, which I was lacking coming out of high school. And in high school, there was the two paths. You go to college, you go in the Army, down in Augusta, Georgia. So my sister had gone to Tuskegee and she had done well, and so I decided I was going off to college. And that was about as much thought as I put into it. And I wasn't successful. So what was plan B? I joined the Army. And I jumped out of planes and shot at people for a living, which was not the greatest career path once you leave the Army. So once I came out, you know, as a paratrooper, not much call for that in the civilian workforce. So I had to kind of muddled around for a little bit, and it goes back to confidence. I didn't think that I could, you know, kind of got my hand slapped a few times at the university level, and so I decided CTE. I tried to find something that was a little shorter, that was, because I could not see myself in 4 years. I could see myself in 6 months. I could see myself finishing something that took a year. So I went to CTE route, and I went to surgical tech school, and I loved it, and it fit me like a glove. Confidence soared because I realized now it was something that I was interested in. And like Mike Pedersen said, I had taken anatomy a couple of times, and I say that, well, I'd taken anatomy 3 times. Been successful in any of those times in undergrad. But it made sense when I went to surgical tech school, when I went to a technical school, because I was able to apply it directly, I was able to see the effects of it. So that begat more, you know, success begets success. So then I went Centera program, and they had a surgical assistant program, and I was there for a few years, and I applied it, and I was just loving it. Grades were excelling. It was easy for me because I wasn't trying, because it wasn't forced. And then I came here to Thomas Nelson. Still had a confidence issue because now I was at a college. Could I really do it? My sister, very successful. Gone, you know, and I kept comparing myself to her. And got here and didn't see many folks that looked like me. So, and of course, you know, I'm a nurse. So I went to nursing school. And so, luckily I was an adult learner, and I didn't need it as much, but I was successful. Graduated here in 2011. Right before I graduated, I had a little bit of money, and I went to Cynthia Calloway, and I said, before I do something stupid with this, please take this away from me. And thankfully, she had her hand out very quickly and took the money away from me. And so she and I brainstormed, and we put together a scholarship for African American men in nursing that we still have today. Please apply. Please apply for this scholarship. All you have to do is want the money and go to school here. And I am a strong supporter of Thomas Nelson and CTE training, because what it did for me, it gave me the confidence, it gave me the skill set to be successful in life. With that confidence, I went and got my bachelor's degree, I went and got my master's degree, and working on the doctorate. Teaching nursing, and what is my favorite subject that I teach? Anatomy. The thing that was just, I couldn't overcome it. And now it just fits like a glove. It just makes perfect sense to me because I'm able to apply the principles. And so that's what I try to get to my students. You know, you can fail. Nothing wrong with failing. I mean, that's all I ever do is fail. But I get up, I brush myself off, and I go again. I keep getting up every time I get knocked down. Every time I get knocked down, I get back up. And you just kind of bounce up a little bit faster, a little bit quicker every time. But if it hadn't been for the career and technical education, I wouldn't be here. Thank you.
Thank you. So have them taken and then the 3 times?
Yes.
So you're an expert at it.
Yeah, you know, I figured it out.
Okay, Charles, how about you? What are your insights?
So good afternoon. Like my colleagues here, I was one of those kids that went through school and really wasn't predetermined to go to college, didn't have any particular technical or hands-on skills to trade upon. One of the most, I think, influential things that spurred me to the campus here at Thomas Nelson was an algebra teacher who told me one day, and I think this is a pretty close quote, "Son, I'm not sure what it is you plan to do with your life, but I hope it doesn't involve mathematics." So today, as a an engineer for new shipbuilding, and having ridden lots of nuclear submarines and nuclear aircraft carriers out to the edge of the continental shelf and seeing them do what they do, I think I feel pretty well vindicated that I've mastered mathematics, although Algebra 2 still remains one of the more poignant memories of my childhood. Now, I attribute my arrival here, I guess, and my influence in my career path, really to two things. One is my dad, who happens to be here today. My dad is my dad was a NASA apprentice graduate who was working on the Apollo program, and he was a flight instructor, and was generous enough, kind enough to teach my brother and I to fly when we were teenagers. We didn't have two nickels to rub together, but somehow we found a way to make it to the airport and fly airplanes. And my maternal grandfather was a commercial fisherman. You heard Mr. Fetter speak a few minutes ago about one of our directors at the shipyard who was influenced by an uncle who was a commercial fisherman. Well, that gentleman was my grandfather. Oh, wow. And through that web, I was influenced really by the technological and aeronautical pursuits of my dad and the work ethic that I'd seen in him day in and day out, and the work ethic that my grandfather exhibited as a commercial fisherman. And so I found myself a child who clearly hadn't quite mastered Algebra 2, but with a keen interest in both aeronautics and the sea. And coming here to Thomas Nelson and really finding the vision here about how you apply the things that you learn sort of sparked an interest in me. I was that in-between kid who really couldn't appreciate education for education's sake, but I really saw it when I got here. And the 2 years that I spent here from 1983 to 1985 really set me on a path that was a thirst for knowledge. And fortunately for me, when I arrived in Old Dominion University to embark on the last 2 years of my bachelor's degree in engineering, I found myself in a co-op program with the shipyard, and for the very first time I stood in the dry dock and looked at a nuclear submarine in its entirety. And I couldn't believe that this kid from the coast of Virginia who couldn't quite get through Algebra 2 could land himself in that situation, and I'll never look back. So my career really was sort of set here at Thomas Nelson, although I didn't know it at the time. And through the influence of a family, which I'm not sure a lot of people have today. I'm not sure a lot of young people have that sort of influence. So I'm very fortunate in that regard. I was set down a path that has served me well and continues to be the passion of my professional life, is watching these warships go to sea and do what they do. And so, you know, for me at least, that was sort of the influence. I think I was really kind of spurred on by that algebra teacher who told me I couldn't. Mm-hmm. And I was determined. I've been determined now for damn close to 40 years, I think, to prove him wrong. And through the encouragement of my dad and the work ethic that I learned through my family, it really sort of set me on the path to be who I am today. So kind of an intricate little web, but it all sort of centers here. When I found myself 100 yards from here flipping through a catalog talking to my dad about what the possibilities could be for my life.
Wow, great. Thank you. So, you all share the commonality of Thomas Nelson Community College, but otherwise, you all's backgrounds are quite diverse. So reflecting on the backgrounds that you all have, share with the audience what advice you can offer to students and parents about career and technical education, particularly given the stigma sometimes associated with CTE compared to the traditional concept of college education. Nancy?
That is a tough one. I've got two daughters, and the youngest one now is interested in nursing, and I've talked to her about going to Thomas Nelson, and she says, Mom, everybody looks at Thomas Nelson as you couldn't make it to a 4-year school. So we've had some really long talks about it. I have pointed out to her friends, parents, who are colleagues of mine and have had very successful careers, people that we know in the community that are graduates of Thomas Nelson, so that she can see that it is a stepping stone. You can make a career by going to Thomas Nelson and getting a 2-year degree, or if you want to, you can go anywhere. The biggest, one of the greatest things about it is that Thomas Nelson will let anybody can come here. It's an opportunity for anybody. These classes are accredited. I've had discussions with my sister-in-law who we were taking classes at the same time, and she would talk about the books she was reading in her English composition class, and they were the same books and assignments and research projects, but I was paying a quarter the cost at Thomas Nelson to get my education. And really the return on investment, more and more I think that we are in this awareness now of what are you going to get when you complete your college program, and you really want to be saddled with debt. Going to a 2-year college can provide an opportunity. There are lots of opportunities in the Hampton Roads area. Cannon, Lee Bear, Riverside, the Newport News Shipyard, Continental, all of these places have needs for trades. Also companies that do HVAC and electrical work. And these are rewarding, well-paying careers with benefits, which is something else too that is getting harder and harder to find. So the return on investment is the biggest bonus that you get here. And then the instructors that I've had were quality. I mean, they were passionate. The classes were small, and I felt like I could go to them afterwards and talk to them and got to know them, and they cared. They cared whether I passed or not. They would sit down with me and go over things that maybe I didn't understand the first time. So it's an excellent return on investment.
Yeah. Thank you. Excellent. Sam?
Okay. All right. So this is something that I think I can relate it very closely to the question. So when I first came to the United States, my whole family came here. Let me just call it like what it is. We're just flat broke. We're here. We have no money, and worse yet, none of us could speak much of it English at all. So one of the things I need to do quickly as the oldest boy in the family was to go to work and try to learn as much as I can. And I tell you, I try to take a job that is not having a lot of speaking skill involved, where I can do things myself and just stay on the side. And at the same time, I'm trying to, at best, to learn some English along the way. And then I know, through friends, and they said, listen, you need to go to Thomas Nelson. Okay, I said, why? I said, because you need some sort of education, because otherwise you're not going to be able to make a good life here, have a good life in the United States. And I said, okay. So the first thing naturally is, what is the cost for me, right? It doesn't matter what it costs, I just don't have any money. Just simple. And then this little thing called Pell Grant happened, right? And then I learned real quickly that Thomas Nelson classes are attributed to two things. Number one, it is much less expensive. Number two, I live in Hampton, the Pembroke apartment at the time, and it is closer to me. I can ride a bike to go to work if necessary. So I decided to go ahead and go to Thomas Nelson. And like Nancy said, pretty much anybody can go to the class here, take whatever you want, as long as you know how to speak English. So I came in there and I talked to one of the counselors. And I can't remember what occasion or however that happened, but they assigned me two classes, Econ 147 and Psych 128. And anybody care to guess how I did on those two classes? I failed miserably because I don't understand what they're talking about. But that helped to build a foundation for me that, man, you really need to learn English before you go start taking classes. But regardless how that happened, the fact that Thomas Nelson is offering classes at the time, for example, I was lacking in the English skill, speaking skill set, and they were able to help me to overcome that. And so I went on to take some classes that necessary in my curriculum at the time. And I do recognize that the statement about the college platform, like Thomas Nelson, having to do with 2 years instead of 4-year traditional. But if I just say this, if what you're concerning with, what anybody is concerning with, is what you're studying and what school you're studying from, or where you graduated from, I think you may be missing a bigger picture here.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's not terribly important. It is important what you study, and it's important where school you graduated from. But I think it's even more important, what do you do with it once you graduated from? What do you do with your education when you finish? So for me, it was a practical thing for me, because clearly I had my sights set on a certain goals and objectives that I want to achieve. And Thomas Nelson is one of the places that was with me from the beginning, and even today, as I continue to go into my office every day and look at folks that are working in our team, things that I learned from way back when, and I remember a few of my professors, and I would just find to ask someone here, they're still here, Mr. George Tyler, who taught me math, Mrs. Lawrence, Dr. Lawrence, who taught me physics, and of course a host of other ones that was very memorable to me. They left me an impression that, I tell you, like Nancy said, a small class, and every student mattered. And so my last point to make in this is the fact that what you invest into the school platform similar to this, like Thomas Nelson, is so much more important that you get a lot more in return if your children or if someone who you send here really wanted to make a career out of themselves. And like I said, it depends on what you do with your education is what really counts at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. And you didn't give up after those first 2 classes either.
No.
Your resilience and...
I'm going back for more punishment.
Okay, Jonathan, do you have any comments?
Okay, you talked about the stigma of CTE, and in healthcare, I don't think it really exists. Or if it is, it's on the fringes, and I'll tell you why. Historically, healthcare has been dominated by physicians and registered nurses. But as automation, as AI, as computerization has come, things have gotten a lot more technical. And once they've become more technical, we've kind of splintered off. Like me as a surgical tech, as a surgical assistant, that role was taken by the registered nurse, which is no longer, it's too technical for the nurse to be able to do all these different roles. We offer here dental hygienist. There's at TCC. There's a radiographer. There's respiratory therapist assistant. There's physical therapy assistant. There's a ton of CTE-based careers, and they are fulfilling careers, and they are well-paying careers that do not require a baccalaureate degree. And so I don't think that there is that much stigma, because they are so present. And I'll give you a quick little example. You have a patient that requires O2, that requires oxygen. And what you don't want to do is just give them dry oxygen, because it'll dry up their nares, and you'll have a host of other issues. So you'll put a humidifier on it. And usually, you used to just be able to screw a bottle of saline into the bottle, you turn it on, and you're good to go. 4 liters, and you want, when the bottle's empty, you screw another bottle in. And someone would ask you, what's the percentage of humidified air? You make up something. But that's the way it was done. Just the other day, I have a group of students at the hospital, and there's this apparatus. There's a lot of whiz-bang stuff to it. And when the patient asked me if I could turn it down a little, and I had to call the respiratory therapist, because I didn't want to touch this thing. I couldn't, it looked, it was beyond my capacity to understand. I could record the numbers, but I could not operate this machinery. Respiratory therapy came in 2 seconds, they were able to manipulate it. So I think that there are so many, we have, I don't want to say fractured, because fractured sounds negative, but we have diversified in healthcare so much that there are so many opportunities now that didn't exist before. And you can make a good living, and it does not require a baccalaureate degree. So I think that the stigma is by folks just showing up, doing their job professionally. And in the healthcare arena, it is so, it's rewarding and it's challenging at the same time. You go to work, and it's always something different. And most often your feedback is immediate. Do you get a positive outcome from the patient? If you don't, then you change your intervention until you get the positive outcome that you're looking for. And that in itself is rewarding. Like I said, and again, you do not need a baccalaureate degree to do a large measure of jobs in the healthcare arena. So I think the stigma, if there is one, it is low. Thank you.
Thank you. So the technologies have pretty much created the need for specialists in your
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Charles.
Yes, sir. I guess my perspective on the advice surrounding career and technical education is really centered up on finding the thing that you're most passionate about. We heard today discussions about focusing on the student as a unique, almost unique opportunity in CTE. And although I think that applies very broadly. What I found, at least, in my CTE experience here at Thomas Nelson, and I think it's also true at our school at the Shipyard as well, is that through the almost unique interactions that you have in a CTE setting, you're naturally drawn to the things that you're most passionate about. And as you move into a career, being a part of something bigger than yourself, working on something that you're passionate about, tends to draw out your best work. And I think that's been my experience. It's what I've found here. Although I really wasn't quite sure what I wanted to pursue professionally, what I found was, I recognize some of the professors' names here. I had some of those very same professors. And what I found was they were focused on the student. They were focused on helping you find your way, whether it was in physics or a different pursuit. For me, it was finding that thing that I was passionate about doing and then going on to sort of further that. I think that's really the advice that I give to people when they ask about going to an institution, a CTE-like institution versus a more traditional role, is you have an opportunity to really focus a little bit more on your passion rather than on just a purely academic pursuit. That's not to say that a traditional university setting is the wrong path. It is the right path for some people, but at least from my experience, being one of those in-between kids, it really did help mature me, and it helped me focus on something that was more of my passion rather than just an interest to a job or something like that.
Great, thank you. So in the interest of time, I'm going to ask the next question to any of you. So the first one or two of you who want to address this, please jump in. So when opportunities to advocate for career and technical education arise, what do you say to legislative, education, and business leaders? Any of you want to jump in and remark on that?
All right, let me take a shot at this one here. Okay, so I'm sure many of you have heard, and I was one of those too as well, that you've heard that you're not a college material, right? So what they're talking about is referred to traditional college, and which is fine. But where we are today, there is a choice, right? This education platform like Thomas Nelson Community College is a choice. You don't have to pursue higher degree if you don't want to. Or if you wanted to go to a higher educational institution like ODU, CNU, and any other one, you also have that choice. But here's the thing that captured my attention. The fact that, if you recall, I did say that when we first came here, we were flat broke. I needed to have some sort of income quickly to help my family. If I was to finish anything at all come out of here, I would be able to go and find employment pretty quickly. And that, to me, is very, very significant things that helped me at that point in time. So I would think that for a legislator or for anybody who care to listen to, just realizing that an education platform like this offers potential student a choice. the choice that if you were to choose, no matter which path you're going with, you would be able to make a pretty good living. And I look around, if you see, every time you walk the street, you look at it and see, well, look at how many cars there are out there on the road. Look how many houses we have. And just take one particular example, take automobiles. I can't possibly imagine that there's not enough work for you to do automobile servicing. And if you look around your house and all that, around here, HVAC, everybody has one. We love comfort. And so that's another thing. And guess where you can get that kind of education, that kind of training fairly quickly. And then you can go out and employ and help your family or whatever it is that you desire to do. So this institution here would be a perfect platform for something like that. So I would encourage that when we have a chance to speak to our legislators or people that are in the government that have decision making, I would appeal that continue to support and provide resources to an institution like this, because it does matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so let me share this fact with the audience. We've shared this earlier with the panelists. Interesting fact, you may have heard a version of this in the past. According to the International Commission on Financing Global Education Opportunity, 50% of today's jobs will be gone by 2030 due to automation, and that was mentioned earlier, automation. How has your work changed since you entered the field, and perhaps what's your outlook on this? Nancy, you go.
I can go. When I first started in electronics, we were laying out circuit boards using Mylar and black tape, taking a schematic and turning it into what we call artwork with a circuit board. It wasn't too long after that, though, that CAD came along, and it was expensive, and it was big machines, and the screen that had green or orange writing on it, and we have really come a long way since then, but more and more I do see equipment that is fed by a computer or operated by a computer. So students, young people coming up, or adults that want to retrain, having an understanding of software, CAD. Where I work in SOE, the products that we make are low volume but high value and have to be very accurate and precise. And a lot of times we couldn't make the parts that we make without this sophisticated equipment that is computer driven. So more and more we're seeing machines that are being run by computers.
I'd like to add just a little bit to that, if you don't mind. When I went to work in the shipyard some 30 years ago, I walked across a large building in our yard. It was called the mold loft, and it's where you would have floor space multiple times as large as this auditorium, where wooden forms would be laid out, and those would be the patterns that we would bend steel to. And there were craftsmen working in that shop day in and day out to lay out steel. And today, all of that is done, to Nancy's point, in a computer. But here's the other thing that we're seeing as time has gone on. Nowadays, we're sort of moving from the thing that you design, even in a computer, in an advanced sense, to where we used to take that computer model and turn a drawing and then send that drawing to the waterfront for something to be built from the blueprint. Nowadays, we're moving the technology to the deck plate with tablets in the hands of the workers and delivering that information so that it's not laid out on the floor, but it's either ported to a machine or some other means of digital delivery to manufacturing, which is a great story technologically. But here's the more, I think, important piece of that relationship, which is the human element of that. It used to be that we would have experienced craftsmen and helpers, or younger people trying to learn the craft as they went to work day in and day out. And if you were a helper, you generally were retrieving tools for the job or something to that effect. And as we started to become more digitally inclined with CTE kind of a focus, we were a little bit concerned that those relationships would be strained while the older workforce wasn't quite as technologically savvy the younger folks were. what we saw was exactly the opposite. That those who had been trained with the newer, grown up with smartphones, or been trained in a CTE environment with the application of that technology, when they paired up with the more experienced craftsmen, were starting to be the beneficiary of a relationship that we didn't foresee. And that is that the more experienced craftsman would lean on the younger employee for the technology, the younger employee would get the benefit of the experience. And so the benefit of the team was enabled a lot more by that technology than we ever really envisioned. So what we're experiencing here, I think, is sort of a cultural change, and not just the way we do our work, but the human interactions associated with that. So I kind of going back to the previous discussion about what you tell legislators and others, what I try to tell them is that there's never been a better time for CTE. We need CTE today more than we've ever needed it, whether we realize it or not, because it fulfills a unique niche between how we do things and what we actually do when it gets right down to the application of the craft, so to speak.
Great, thank you. Jonathan, you touched on a little bit about technology and healthcare. Do you have anything more to add about how jobs have evolved over time?
Well, I will say this, to the benefit of healthcare, and I know a lot of your panelists had talked about how jobs are getting outsourced and going overseas, and they had talked about the radiologists. The nice thing about the CTE base, the respiratory therapist, the licensed practical nurse, and the RN, ours involves being present. Being present. And you cannot overstate that. You can have a lot of the technical skills. I can put Foley's in, I can take them out, smoothly, but being present, you can't outsource that. You can't, you have to be there. Even with the automation, which greatly helps us. And even though there are less registered nurses, there are more support folks. There are more, again, respiratory therapists, surgical techs, surgical assistants, LPNs, who are still present with the patient. And that is the nice security blanket, because there's you still got to pay your mortgage too. So,
absolutely, same.
So, I left NASA in December 16 of 1996, and for the span of about 10 years, I was outside doing commercial work. We build electronic controls and manufacturing them, and we do everything from circuit board, building bare board, where we actually populate components level, which you're never going to hear any more about that. You're not going to see that happening around here in the United States, at least anyway. But I see the evolution that is beginning to completely go away when wave soldering machine, embedded micro components, and all that stuff. It's all done by computer or some sort of automation process. And as things progressing down that path, for 10 years, I begin to see it begin to completely, almost disappearing. But what surfaced was the servicing side, right? So all the control that we build goes into power plant, goes into steel mill, goes into all type of industry that have a concern with the pollution and emission. They need to be maintained, and worse, they need to be able to learn how to repair. And that skill set is still very much in demand, because if you think about a span of 10 years, how many of these systems are in place, serviced, and upgraded, to say the least. And so, as far as job going away with automation, that's almost happening as we speak. But as far as workforce concerned, the ability to be able to, what I call it one must learn how to adopt new skill set. That is important, and where do you get that training from? And I go back to the same thing that we have here. This is a platform that could assist that kind of training. And if institutions like this align with the industry to find out what or where the needs are, I think that's where it can make the biggest difference in terms of helping out with the younger workers.
Thank you. So again, in the interest of time, I'm going to ask this next question to perhaps one or two of you, so feel free to jump in. what are the key soft skills, such as problem solving, communication, and professionalism in your field, and how can they be included in career and technical education? Who wants to jump in there and talk about soft
I'll take that. And I think I kind of answered that when we talked about nurses. The soft skills, no one remembers, I'm sure a number of you have had the need for healthcare, and no one remembers what the nurse did, but they definitely remember how the nurse made them feel. That is it's very easy to say what a plumber does, what an electrician does, but it's very difficult to say what a nurse does, to be able to quantify it. But what a nurse does is, how does the nurse make you feel? Those soft skills are what's almost as important. Even though we have automation, we have AI, we have a lot of these technologies, it still goes back to how this one-on-one connection. And with the CTI training, at least for me, and I can say anecdotally, I was able to immediately put what I learned in the classroom to work in the practice setting, and I was able to understand, I was able to tweak and learn and grow and get better, because I was able to have these real-world applications, these real-world environments that I was able to take this nebulous information that I learned and put it in a practical experience. And those soft skills are paramount to being a good care provider. And when I say care provider, it is not just nursing, it's not just the physician, it is all of the others. It is again, I keep referring back to it, it's the dental hygienist, it's the dental assistant, it's the ENT. That might be the first, for most of us, excuse me, I shouldn't say most, for some of us, that's our first experience with healthcare in the healthcare setting. It's those folks that you see first. The other thing I want to say is the training. It's not the same training. I was thinking about the stigma. I was talking about the CTE training. With AI, with the advancements, with simulation, it's not your father's shop class anymore. It's not, shop class when I was in high school in the 80s. It is highly technical, and it's highly specialized, and it requires a lot of critical thinking. And lastly, the soft skills, even on a larger level, I keep saying last, on a larger level, like a system-based level, you take Riverside, you'll take Centera, you'll take Bon Secours, they get rated on their patient satisfaction levels, and these guide their care. This guides where they go. If you get enough negative scores, heads roll. So they are very, very, very serious about their patient satisfaction levels. And I don't know if any of you guys have been inpatient. You'll get a survey immediately after. Mm-hmm. You'll get a phone call. You'll get several phone calls, because this is a customer service. This is a customer service-based business. This is a collaborative environment where it used to be this paternalistic setting. Those days are gone now. So the soft skills are very, very important.
Thank you. Anybody else want to chime in on soft skills?
I just wanted to put a plug in. Thomas Nelson and the Workforce Development Center offers, or has in the past, and I believe they're going to do it again this summer, manufacturing camps for middle school and high school students. And they get introduced to technology, CNC machining, 3D printing. They have hover games, UAV camp. One of the things that, in addition to students learning mechanical skills and about some of the equipment, is the soft skills that they learn coming together as a team. These students, parents sign them up from all different school systems. They're not coming there with their friends. They actually put them into company teams, and they select a leader. They report out. They all work together. They negotiate. They negotiate with the other teams. So if any of you have students or know middle and high school students, that is an excellent opportunity not only to learn about technical skills and kind of get their feet wet in that, but also it draws out their soft skills of working together as a team and public speaking and that kind of thing.
Excellent, thank you. Yes, and you can find that information on our website. So before we get to our last question about any comments you want to share with the audience that we've not talked about, Can any one or two of you speak on public-private partnerships and collaboration that could benefit career and technical education? Charles, do you have any comments about that?
I do. We have a couple of folks here from our apprentice school today, and I spoke earlier about the NASA apprentice school. We've heard a little bit today around apprenticeships in general. I think that's probably one of the best examples, at least that I've seen, of public-private partnerships in growing a CTE-based workforce over the course of my professional life. What I see, at least from the apprentice experiences that I'm most familiar with at Newport News, is that apprentice experience not only grows craft leadership at the deck plate or on the ship level or in the shops, but almost every aspect of our business is driven by the public-private partnerships that exist with that school and the community college system here in Virginia that partner so well with it. Whether we're talking about business leaders or whether we're talking about folks in our cost engineering lines of work, or marine designers who do the basic ship designs and layouts and material selections and calculations, or one of the programs that has been picked up by our school in recent years that takes a handful of promising young apprentices and builds upon their 2-year education through the community college system and sends them on to get an engineering degree. That's been one of the best examples that I've seen of a public-private relationship that produces the workforce that we need, that's both technologically savvy and communicative, really. So it kind of goes back to the soft skills piece. And in our business, being able to communicate very complicated things in simplistic terms not only is good for the line of work that we're in, but it's also the lifeblood of building trust with our customers. So our customers won't trust us unless they know that we care and that we can explain complicated matters in a very simple way. And so from a public-private relationship, it's that educational experience coupled with industrial know-how that produces the professionals that we need in almost every area of our business, that they can do their job, do it with confidence, express themselves well, and build trust that really matters. So from my perspective, those apprenticeships and community college experiences are key. And I think that's a public-private relationship that works. Unfortunately, I'm not sure it's the norm. And so it's something that really deserves some care and feeding, especially for those who are in maybe the later stages of their career as an opportunity to give back. So we haven't talked a lot about that, but that's to me one of the more important things in the public-private partnership is to think of yourself as you move through your career and giving back to those who desperately need your experiences as they start their career.
Great, that's a great statement and an excellent example that you shared. So in our remaining 2 minutes, what additional comments would you like to share with the audience regarding career and technical education? Nancy, do you have any additional comments?
There are so many opportunities in the Hampton Roads area and nationally. Anytime you turn on the news and read the newspapers, there are lots and lots of opportunities. And a comment was made by some of the speakers earlier that the traditional sitting in a classroom for 7 or 8 hours a day, not every student can do that, and then as well as in college for 4 years. The CTE programs offer an excellent opportunity to go through that in a short order and get a well-paying job with benefits. So there are jobs out there, employers, they're looking for people who want to work and think.
Thank you, Sam.
So we all heard about 355 ships that the government or the Navy would like to have, and so you can see that it's not so much the money that go into building those ships, but the skill set that would need it in order to be able to make those things happen. And for those of you who have a youngster that would like to go into the CTE field, I think a platform like this, Thomas Nelson, would provide that choice for you. Now, if he or she inspired to go on to 4 years education, more power to them. But at least for 2 years, they would give themselves a chance to learning what it is that they wanted to do and where it is that they wanted to go.
Thank you. Jonathan, anything else?
Yeah, there was a young lady, I think it was over here, someone that had asked about CTE and how to recruit women. I don't know if she's still here. There she is. The reason my statement is the flip side of what you're talking about. I want to let folks know that there are opportunities for men in nursing. That there are opportunities for black men in nursing. We need to better reflect the population in healthcare. Healthcare is not just a bastion for women. It's demanding, in all facets it's demanding, it is rewarding, it is immediate. I sat with a patient, I'll give you just a quick little story. I sat with a patient last Tuesday with my clinical group, and they said he was a customer service issue. So don't go in there. So, of course, I went in there, and I brought one of the students, because you can't just get the good, you've got to be able to figure out how to deal with the bad. I'm not saying that this was bad, because the only thing he wanted was someone to listen to him. We sat there in his room. He was hooked up to, we hooked him to the vital machine, but because he was he had, I forgot what the pathogen was, but his machines had to stay in his room. And so we hooked him up to it, and actually I had forgotten to take him off, because I would just sit and I just listened to him. But as he talked, I understood maybe every third word, but I didn't have to. Because it was a therapeutic communication. It was all about him, it wasn't about me. And we sat, and we talked, or he talked, and I listened. And I watched his vital signs. I watched them normalize. I watched them come down. I watched his heart rate come down. And I realized that's all he wanted. He wanted someone to be present. So I'm here today to let folks know, it is tremendously rewarding. It is tremendously frustrating. It is a balance, as with everything else. But I do want folks to know that it is available to men. We want men in this profession. So that's one of the reasons I'm here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. Charles, you want to?
I think my comments would be this: it's that career and technical education is a team sport. It takes us all, and I'll go back to something we talked about earlier that I mentioned earlier, and that is that giving back is important, and that's not true just from a philanthropic standpoint, but it's also true. I think when you look at the demographics, I think we were talking earlier today about the baby boomers moving out of the workforce. A lot of what we know technologically was created over the last 4 or 5 decades in the years, come up to and after World War II, as the Cold War drove a lot of technology, and now those technologies are merging headlong into a digital revolution. And as I'm looking out into the future, I'm looking at the next generation, the next workforce, the ability to know why we do the things we do today, and to take the lessons that we learned in the past, and then to integrate them in an increasingly digital and technological world is crucial, and it'll define our success. The only way that is going to really be successful, I think, is if we do a good job at the human level of integrating the experiences of the past with the technologies of the future, and that means taking the folks who have learned those lessons and experienced those things over the years, and having them feed that back in service to our young folks or our second career people as they begin to make their way in their professional lives. So giving back is more than just a philanthropic thing. I think it's important for our future.
And we thank you for giving back today. So please help me in thanking our panelists. If you have any particular questions, they'll be available after the program to meet with you. Thank you.